I'm making a response video to a few videos, general conversation. So first you have Matt here, who's talking to Professor Anton, and they're basically arguing over this idea whether reality is something that's going on in our brain, like our consciousness is doing reality, or whether reality is in the world and our consciousness is just kind of a byproducty thing. Yeah. Obviously, I think we're doing the byproduct thing, and that's really almost impossible to tell where either of these guys stand. So just play a little bit of Matt's video and play with it a little bit. It relates to Antikondavad, who wants proof of something we might call a reality. He wants it. He wants it. It's not. I'm not saying he's demanding we go all the way back to the Big Bang, or we go back all the way to some sort of material forces, and we explain the exact nuance of how this complexity took place. But in a way, yeah, it's what he's sort of playing that game. It's like, I won't accept it until you. It's like somebody at a murder trial, and you have genetic evidence, and you have witness testimony, and you have all kinds of evidence. All you don't have is a confession. And somebody just will be like, I'm not convicting him until he confesses. And you're like, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, he doesn't want to go to jail. He's not going to confess. All right, but we have the evidence. And it's like, yeah, we have enough evidence to kind of convict this truth about what we are. And so, yeah. So that takes care of this. So it's related to Antikondavad, and then it's also related sort of to anti-bullshit man's section. I don't know where we are, J or I or something, whatever. Yeah, it's just such a raggy commentary, but I mean, it just gets to this point of he recognizes that there's some sort of impositional problem with the game we're playing, but he doesn't really do the absolute thing. So it's almost like where I would argue that intelligence, right now you could look at somebody we call retarded and understand the necessity of you taking charge for that person, not letting that person hurt itself or others because it's not intellectually capable of functioning efficiently. And I'm just applying a higher standard. I'm saying, well, no, there's even what we're calling retarded is, yeah, okay, that's the basement, but I mean, there's lots of stuff in the basement. I mean, below necessarily functional, and there's lots of delusionary people I could throw into that category who, yeah, they need a master. They need somebody to point out that they are inefficient and dysfunctional, and even though they think they're winning, they're not winning. And so he's sort of getting into that argument a little, except he does it in this snarky, insulting way where he calls everything undemonstrated and unproven and juvenile and, let's see, what is that word? Unconvincing, myopic, frivolous, felonious, fallacious. Just all these kind of, with no proof, no like counter argument for a better proof beyond a sentence saying I'm right, you're wrong, or something. I mean, just no substance to the argument, just some sort of dismissal from, oh, nobody takes that seriously, kind of crap. Yeah, no one takes it seriously, and yeah, no one counter-argues it either. So I mean, what's the point? And he's claiming he's counter-arguing with no counter-argument, like beyond insults, which is sort of a joke. All right, so anyway, I want to get to that thing because it just gets to this idea that what are you seeing when you see the game we're playing? And I'm arguing that if you really see the game, it's like this chessboard laid out. And there was a scene in Star Wars, the original Star Wars. I think it was actually the first Star Wars, actually. And they're playing chess, and the pieces are like monsters, but they're they're like alive. It's like the chess pieces were alive, and they're playing chess, and that's sort of the metaphor I see when I think about what we're doing here, is that the game is being played with these precious commodities, little living things, and they're going to be destroyed, manipulated by the gameplay. But there is no winners. There's no players. There's no my team, your team. There's just the pieces and how they're going to, either they're going to gracefully kill each other or not gracefully kill each other. Either they're going to kill a lot of each other to get to their checkmate, or they're not going to kill a lot of each other to get to their checkmate. But there's no winning here. And in a second metaphor, I'd say, is like the Olympic example or something. Yeah, you get this one guy who gets this gold medal, or one team wins the Super Bowl, and all the other teams are all losers for a year. They're all saying, if I only, I could have, if I should have, maybe if I would have, and he's talking like, no, they're all happy with their losing, which he just throws that out there like I'm supposed to believe that the losers are all perfectly content to be losers, especially the losers who got their back broken and are paralyzed now. Yeah, they're loving that to death. They love that when that shit happens. I bet Bo Jackson just loved it, when his knee was busted into a million pieces and he was threatened with potential loss of his, I'm going to be the greatest sports hero in hero-ness history kind of thing. He recovered quite well, but I'm just saying it was all over for him for a while. All over. Game over. Literally. Don't tell me he's having a good time. You go down the list. People ruined by the losing. Ruined. Not just like bitter. Ruined. Anyway, that's not the subject. I really do want to get back to this. Okay, so right here he's talking about Daniel Dennett and Richard Feynman, the physicist, and how they're both basically saying the same thing. Feynman's saying, give me a world where I don't know nothing until I take it apart and I find out how it works, which to me makes perfectly good sense. Somebody shows up, throws something in front of you, and says, here. Of course you're going to take it apart, find out how it works. What does it do? And that's what we've done with this thing being alive, and we figured it out. Okay, it's this biological thing that happened, this evolution thing through this process of natural selection, where the only thing that was really constructing us was this brutal competition we were involved in, where this winner takes it all kind of crap. And winning didn't mean anything like, you're a great guy. No, winning meant you killed everything else really efficiently. That kind of crap. It's not a good story of being a winner. It's kind of a nasty, crappy story of being a winner. And that constructs us, and we have these tools, and, it's just not that complicated. And where was I going with that? Well, anyway. But that's the context of our existence. And Feynman is correct that you understand it by dissecting it. And Dennett is correct in the sense that we've dissected and we kind of know what it is. We're just running programs. We're an algorithm. We're a collection of knee jerks. That's about it. I wish I could tell you it's all about something else, but it's really not about anything else but a bunch of jerks going on in your brain. Little jerks. Words that jerk you. Thoughts, memories jerking you. Just crap jerking you. And you'll be a jerk to be jerked. Grow up. Yeah.
Essentially what there is are just these number crunching processes that, it's strange that Feynman and Dennett would claim to be materialists when they really reduce the world, whether it's the genetic world or the physical worlds, to a kind of an equation. So
yeah, no, they reduce it to what it is. Mechanics, that's right. It's just energy, and it's energy in relationship through time, and that's all there is. The energy has, the quanta has properties. It's initiated into a wave, so to speak, all right, in a universe that doesn't have any friction, kind of. It's the poke, and in a frictionless environment, it goes forever, so to speak. And that's kind of the way to see it. It's just the same noise just bouncing back and forth and up and down in the box. And the more the noise bounces around, it breaks into little smaller pieces, but it still has the same amount of energy. It just keeps particulating. Or however you want to look at it. You can look at it as a bunch of little pieces that fly in and then stick together, and then or you can look at it as a bunch of pieces that fly apart. It doesn't matter really how you twist thermodynamics. The game is still the same game. It's attraction and repulsion, and we're just playing. The matter inside of us is just conformed to play the attraction-repulsion game to maximize survivability of a DNA molecule. Sadly, that's all there is.
Of equations. And forget that even with mathematics, you're still dealing with a symbolic system. You're dealing with metaphor, right? So even
So now he says metaphor a lot here, and I just, I don't want to get nitpicky, but I think the word to use is analogy. I don't think these are metaphors. I think these are analogies. We're comparing like things with like things, and the idea of math being symbolic, I think, is nonsense. I think it is a quite literal, explicit picture of reality. I mean, it's in a, obviously the number 2 as we write it is symbolic, but the concept of 2 is not symbolic. It's explicit. The concept we visualize, the understanding of 2 things, is quite coherent to the fact of the matter. And that's the premise. So the numbers are the premises. They're the things that are reliable. The category 2, the category 3, the category 5. And the fact that there are different relationships between 2, 3, and 5.
science, even mathematical physics, is dealing with and cannot escape metaphor, right? So the very basis upon which the world is known through human language, it's all resting on metaphor. Our capacity to compare one.
Well, see, compare one thing to another is not metaphor. Let him finish that.
One thing to another. To say this is the same as that, or that's different than this.
Right. Yeah, see, I just don't think that would be metaphor. Metaphor would be more comparing it to something imaginary. Imaginary? Yeah, imaginary. Where analogizing would be more like something more direct. But it doesn't really matter, right? I guess it really doesn't matter. But the point is, I don't think either one are appropriate. I think there's an absoluteness to 2-ness and 3-ness and 4-ness and 5-ness and 6-ness. I think there's an absoluteness to the relationship between a circle's radius and its circumference. I think there's absolutenesses, relationship of a triangle, its sides to the angles of its total angle, or blah blah, and its volume.
Even when we say 3 plus 2 equals 5, that's a discovery, I think, because there's nothing in, it's true, but there's nothing in 3 and 2 that's, identical to 5, right? The equal sign there isn't identity. There's a certain symmetry, certainly. 2 plus 3 does add up to 5, but...
Yeah, so why don't you just stop there? The relationship is solid. The relationship that of this idea, the concept of adding, is solid. It's a solid function. It's a solid circumstantial relationship that if you take 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, you'll get 5. That this is a truth. And it's a function, a functional truth. It's not something we made up. And as you said the word, it's something we discovered. We didn't discover it by making it up. We discovered it by seeing it in the world and seeing how the relationship worked.
Can you see the metaphorical structure here? How it's a certain an identification of identifiable entities is being made. In the same way that when we
Well, see, again, there are identifiable. That's the whole point. We're back to like arguments like water is wet. And why is water wet? Absolutely, because we invented the word wet to describe exactly what water is. That's where the word came from. It's like fire. You can't miss it. Okay? You just can't miss it. We invented the word to describe the thing. So those words are rock solid. The words that get us in trouble are random, spontaneous, purpose, function. Words describing relationships that we haven't been explicit about what we're describing, the extent of it.
Say like the pond mirrors the sky.
Now that's a metaphor, right? Now when you're going to play with reality and talk about reality like it has something to do with the fact that the sky is reflected in the pond and the light bounces and refracts and none of that poetry or crap has anything to do with describing reality or understanding that reality has explicit, definable and describable function, and that everything we're doing, everything I'm saying, everything I've lived for, everything I feel, every chemical bouncing around inside of me has had a history. And I am a product of that history. I am, and a lot of the formula of that function, the formula of it, the ingredients of it, the things dictating it and guiding it, are structures that we can understand, structures of common psychology. Common psychology of humans, of modern day humans, of mammals even, modern mammals. You can narrow it in all kinds of ways, you can describe it in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of categories. And as long as you carefully describe these categories, your language and your discussion is very much not a metaphor or analogy, it's very much a conversation about reality, using reality to make the conversation. You're talking about real concepts, real categories, real properties, real descriptions. Fire is a thing. When you say the word, you're you're doing justice to fire. In many respects, you're giving it a sensible, distinct title, and it is for most of the, by most parts for the right reasons, because it has certain properties. It fits its definition, and its definition is narrow and specific enough that you are. You can count on the reliability of the word and its usage.
Or to say that
I'm gonna skip along here. Let's see. So all this poetry mumbo jumbo talk doesn't go anywhere. Where is the numbers? Let's try all around this point.
I think there's another way of relating to what we are, what we came from. That isn't based upon that relationship of mastery, of technological domination. The philosopher Pierre Hadot and historian Pierre Hadot wrote a book called The Veil of Isis, about the history of the idea of nature in Western philosophy. And he distinguishes between two basic ways of understanding nature, what he calls the Promethean on the one hand and the Orphic on the other. Now, the Promethean is the Cartesian, technologically empowered way of knowing nature that I've been talking about, and the Orphic is this more poetic, receptive.
Right, so that's then right there, right? This whole, again, so we have to accept this idea that this is some sort of, these are the way people understand, and I'm saying that doesn't have to be the way we understand. We don't have to understand life as, how do we take advantage? How do we own? How do we control? In a sense of exploiting technical skills. I mean, that's not I think Matt, that most science isn't done by people who are trying to exploit it. It's done by people like Feynman or Einstein or Edison, even people who wanted to know. They wanted to. Their hunger was just in the idea of doing, okay, and not in some malicious purpose of personal gain or ambitions and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying none of these men had ambition. I'm just saying the goal was to understand, to extend understanding, to perfect it, to take it that next step. And there's nothing wrong with that, the pursuit of knowledge. There's a lot of that in that science. Quite obviously, it's become very useful science, ever since like Galileo, and they started using telescopes to game people on insurance policies on ships, because people would get telescopes, they'd see a ship that everybody else thought got sunk coming into port, and then they'd buy all the shares, cheap, because everybody thought that ship was sunk, and so some guy could make a killing tricking people with science, using technology to dupe people. And so there's lots of people who want to use things to their advantage, for their profit. And that's bad, but that's because humans basically suck. And maybe that would be better understood by you and Professor Anton and all these people if we still look like Tyrannosauruses, let's say. Let's say Tyrannosauruses got intelligence first. Could have happened that way. Or Allosauruses or whatever. Some Asaurus with nasty big teeth and bad habits, in terms of, rather crude in their basic function. They wouldn't be playing this game, denying their origins, this fairy tale crap, because every time they looked at each other, they'd see the evolution written all over their faces. Okay, they wouldn't be able to deny the crude function, in spite of their elegant conversation and their all that other crap. And so then maybe they would, they'd be maybe much more capable then of gaining enough perspective to say, well, if I'm physically constructed by nature, maybe I am psychologically being constructed, and maybe I am being gamed by senses and notions and ambitions and, that are just crap. And now we're back to anti-bullshit, man, and this idea that people think they're playing a game they can win. That somehow if they're comfortable, it doesn't matter if other people are uncomfortable for it. And that's an insanely stupid economy. You can't win that way. There's no point in winning the gold medal if winning the gold medal means that all these other people are going to feel like losers and assholes. Then your victory, your sense of accomplishment has absolutely no meaning, because it's completely overwhelmed and outweighed by the suffering and hardship, the negative states being created in the beta organisms. And you can see that in many societies. The privileged few, the tiny, 0.0001% of the population living in comfort and opulence, having every need met, at the price of the 99.9999%, living in shit and carrying a heavy burden through most of their life. There's no winning in those equations. The slave owners didn't win, because in the very moments they were experiencing their comfort, the very moment that was taking place, brains just a few hundred feet away were doing exactly the opposite, and throwing away any value you could possibly claim you had attained through your gratification. And then we know that these gratifications don't even mean anything. So there's this argument that somehow these miserable people are really happy because they say they are. But the bigger joke is the demonstrated lack of comfort or happiness in the people claiming to be the happy ones, the ones that have won. The winners are often losers, psychologically anyway. They're still struggling because they can't play the hunger game when they satisfy the hunger. But then something else has to come along to keep them in the game. And so they either become obsessively hungry, where they're never satisfied, some kind of perfectionist chasing something they'll never have, or they become insatiable in the sense that they can find no gratification because they've climbed the best mountain and the only thing left are lesser mountains. And so they might go for drugs or some other mechanism to make the mountains look taller so they can find it tolerable to waste their time climbing them. I mean, when you've done something perfectly, it's really hard to go back to doing it imperfect. For anybody who's like, say some guy bowls a 300 game, in bowling, it might be kind of irritating when he goes back and he has to accept just rolling the regular games again. I don't know. But it is all, we're just talking psychology now, this game we're playing. But in overview, the game can be understood. The reductionism does work. You can use Feynman and Dennett and Einstein and Darwin. You can use all this science to sit there and just understand what took place here. And what took place was a molecule replicated, and that replication incited a complexity war. A war to achieve advantageous position through tool making, tool construction. Our whole body is a tool. And the tool that we have in more abundance than the other organisms. We have some have the biggest teeth. Well, we have the bigger brain, and but it's mostly just a tool for conniving and scheming, and not much else. And there's no, these people keep projecting, where they're going with their intelligence, and there's nowhere to go. The game is not going to get better somewhere else. It's not better out there in the rest of the universe. There's no better game. The game is just impose a need, all right, and then go out and satisfy it. Make hunger, and then make a game for something to go chase its hunger. Go chase the gratification of its hunger. And that's all you got here. And big brains aren't going to make you want to play a game that dumb. Especially when the rules of the game are basically somebody wins and somebody loses. The smart things aren't going to see any victory in creating losers. That's a non-starter. It just is. Non-starter. You're going to make losers? No. That's not my definition of winning. So anyway. That's enough. But, yeah. It's, I'm just the premises are the game. People don't want to. People haven't given me any response to my simple contention that this whole thing is based on an idea where you categorize things. You define them by describing them, by associating them with other things that have properties. So you understand carbon by understanding oxygen and hydrogen and borium or some other element. You understand everything based on the context of how it interacts with other things and the rules of those interactions. And understanding us is just understanding the natural selection that created us, the forces that created us, and understanding that this is all just a projection, a movie being run inside our brains, this thing called living, reality as we see it mentally, and as we feel it. and it doesn't function for any other purpose than the replication of a molecule, and so it's therefore incredibly flawed as a game to play. It's not engineered, but the problem is there is no engineerable game. There is no rational reason to create the need for a game. It's just there isn't. And there is no other game to play but some kind of game of need. Some kind of chase game. Some kind of game, some kind of hunger game. And nothing intelligent would see purpose in creating a hunger game. I still didn't say that the way I want to say it. But I'm just saying that we have the evidence of our origin. We understand why we have this shape of complexity, why we stand out in the field of the material things, the varieties of matter that exist. We are this way for a reason we can understand. And there's lots of biology on this planet that is doing something really similar to what we're doing. And just out of cruel bigotry, we are denying the relevance of the game it's playing, the meaning of the game it's playing, just out of bigotry alone, merely because it doesn't speak our language. I mean, we have failed so catastrophically in these simple observations and understandings, but they don't require. You don't need a supercomputer to be able to recognize bigotry and to prove it by demonstrating how what you think needs to be doesn't need to be. If I just change the circumstance a little tiny bit, and your ego is now no longer going to be satisfied by the new circumstance, and all of a sudden your principles are completely different. All of a sudden your reaction is completely different. The only thing that has you invested is your ego. Nothing else. No, that's probably enough. Yeah, still a little short of done well enough, so I'll have to write eventually, I suppose. But I really hate doing that. Yeah, I hate the thought of it. So anyway, till next time. Such.